When my husband passed away, I felt like time stopped inside our little brick house on the east side of Atlanta. 41 years of marriage gone quiet in a single heartbeat. The laughter, the morning coffee talks, even the fussing over little things. All of it vanished into silence. People filled the church that morning, dressed in black and whispering sympathy they could not possibly understand. There were business partners, neighbors, and old friends from our church choir. But none of them saw what I saw. They did not see the world I built with my husband, Solomon Green, crumble right before my eyes. Solomon had built a small empire with his two hands. 5 gas stations, 3 rental properties, and a little farm up in South Carolina where he said he'd retire one day. He was quiet about money, never boastful, but I always knew he'd done well. What I didn't know, not until that day, was just how well. I stood beside his casket, holding a white handkerchief, when I noticed my son, my only child, David, standing stiff as a board. His eyes were red from crying, but beside him stood his new fiancée, a young woman named Camille. She was pretty, no doubt about that, but something about her spirit didn't sit right with me. Her eyes kept wandering, not in grief but in curiosity, scanning the flowers, the suits, the jewelry, the cars parked outside. While folks came up to hug me, she didn't shed a single tear, just squeezed David's hand like she was claiming him for herself. And when our pastor began his final prayer, her gaze was fixed not on the cross but on the donation box near the door. After the service, as everyone began to leave, a familiar voice called out my name. "Mrs. Green," said a calm, steady voice behind me. It was Mr. Franklin, Solomon's longtime lawyer, a gentleman who'd been by our side for decades. His gray hair was neatly brushed, his glasses shining under the church light. "Can we talk in private for a moment?" he asked gently. We stepped into a small room off the main hall, away from the crowd. Mr. Franklin handed me a sealed envelope, the kind that looks older than the paper inside it. My name was written in Solomon's handwriting, strong and certain, like him. "He asked me to give you this personally," Mr. Franklin said. "He knew the time was near. Told me you'd understand what to do." My hands trembled as I took it. The envelope felt heavy, not from paper, but from whatever truth it carried. When I finally got home that night, the whole house felt hollow. The smell of his aftershave still lingered in the bedroom. His jacket still hung on the back of his chair, like he might walk in any minute. I made a pot of coffee out of habit, poured 2 cups, then realized how foolish that was. I sat down in his study, under the golden light of the desk lamp, and opened the envelope. Inside were 2 things, a formal will and a handwritten letter. My breath caught when I began to read. "My dearest Ruth," it began, "if you're reading this, I've gone ahead. I never wanted to burden you with talk of death, but I need you to know the truth. I've left you an estate worth $5 million in real estate, businesses, and investments, all in your name. I kept it quiet for a reason. People change when money enters a room, and I fear that some already sense it. Protect what we built. Be cautious, even with those you love most. Trust Mr. Franklin. Trust your instincts. You are stronger than you believe." The words blurred through my tears. $5 million. I set the paper down, clutching my chest as the weight of it hit me. Not the money, the warning. Even with those you love most, Solomon must have known something. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about that letter. The way Camille watched every detail at the funeral. The questions she'd asked before, about the businesses, the property, even the insurance, they all came flooding back. That afternoon, David called. "Mom," he said softly, "Camille and I were wondering if you plan on keeping the house. It's too big for you now. She works at a bank. Said she could help you downsize. Maybe take out a loan for something smaller." His words sank like cold water in my stomach. "A loan? For what, baby?" "I'm not going anywhere," I said quietly. He hesitated. "She just thinks you'd be more comfortable somewhere new. Less painful memories." Painful memories. No, that wasn't what Camille wanted to erase. She wanted to erase me, or at least move me out of the way. I hung up, walked into Solomon's study, and sat back in his old chair. My fingers brushed over the leather armrest, the one he used to drum with his fingertips whenever he was thinking hard. I whispered into the quiet, "You were right, Solomon. You saw what I couldn't." That night, I decided I would do as he asked. I would keep that secret buried, not out of greed, but survival. For once in my life, silence would be my weapon. But deep down, I already sensed what was coming. Because a woman who looks at money the way Camille did, she doesn't stop at curiosity. She calculates, she plans, and she doesn't come alone. I thought keeping quiet would protect me. But 3 days later, I learned just how fast greed can find its way to your front door. Dressed in high heels, holding a lawyer's briefcase. 3 days after the funeral, I was still learning how to breathe again in that empty house. The mornings were the hardest. I would wake expecting to hear Solomon's soft hum in the kitchen, the sound of the radio playing those old Sam Cooke songs he loved. But all that greeted me now was silence, thick, heavy, and unkind. Atlanta rain had been falling since dawn, tapping gently on the windows like the sky was mourning with me. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat in his study, where the air still smelled faintly of tobacco and leather. The bronze picture frame on his desk held our wedding photo, me in my simple lace dress. Him smiling that gentle, certain smile that made me feel safe for more than 40 years. That morning, I told myself I would try to start living again. Maybe go to church on Sunday. Maybe cook one of his favorite meals. I thought I had time to heal. But I was wrong. Because right as I lifted the cup to my lips, the doorbell rang. At first, I ignored it. Folks from church had been dropping by with casseroles and sympathy pies for days. But when it rang again, harder this time, I sighed and went to answer. When I peeked through the glass, my stomach twisted into knots. It was her, Camille, standing on my front porch in a pressed beige suit, her hair tucked neatly behind her ears. And beside her stood a man I had never seen before, tall, clean-cut, holding a leather briefcase. I opened the door just enough to speak. "Camille, what brings you here?" She smiled, a polite little smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning, Mrs. Green. I hope I'm not intruding. This is Mr. Preston. He's an attorney. We just need a few minutes of your time." My heart began to pound. "An attorney? For what?" Mr. Preston stepped forward with a practiced calm. "Good morning, ma'am. I represent your son and his wife-to-be regarding matters related to Mr. Solomon Green's estate." My throat went dry. Matters regarding his estate. Solomon has been gone less than a week. Camille's smile tightened. "Yes, ma'am, but we wanted to make sure everything was being handled properly. These things can get complicated if not done right away. David and I just thought it best to have professional help, without waiting for an invitation." She walked right into my house, wiping her shoes on the mat like she owned the place. Mr. Preston followed, clicking open his briefcase as if this were a business meeting and not a widow's home. I stood frozen for a moment, then slowly closed the door. "You said we. Does David know you're here?" She glanced at Mr. Preston before answering. Of course he does. He just wants to make sure everything is fair. Fair? I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. Fair to whom? Mr. Preston cleared his throat, pulling out a neat stack of papers. Mrs. Green, under Georgia inheritance law, your son has the right to request disclosure of all assets belonging to his late father. That includes business holdings, properties, bank accounts, and investment portfolios. We're here to deliver a formal request for those records. He placed the papers on my coffee table as if they belonged there. I could barely process the words. You mean to tell me, I said slowly, that my son sent a lawyer to demand his father's assets before the man's headstone has even been set? Camille sighed softly, her tone dripping with false concern. Mrs. Green, I know this is difficult, but David just wants what he's entitled to. You've had a wonderful life, and no one's trying to take that from you. It's just time to think about what's fair for everyone. I stared at her, that young, polished face hiding something rotten underneath. Fair, I whispered. Your idea of fairness seems to come with dollar signs. Mr. Preston interrupted before she could speak. You have 15 business days to provide full documentation. If we don't receive it, we'll have to proceed with legal action. The words legal action hit me like a slap. 15 days? I asked, my voice shaking. And if I refuse? Camille's smile faded into something sharper. Then the courts will have to get involved. Mrs. Green. No one wants that. Especially not family. Family. The way she said it made my blood boil. I looked down at the papers on the table. The official stamps. The lawyer's signature. It was all real. She had planned this. Every move. Every step. Finally, I said, you can tell my son that I'll be speaking with Mr. Franklin before signing anything. Camille stood, smoothing the fabric of her dress. That's fine, but you should hurry. Legal delays can get messy. You don't want to lose what's rightfully his. Then, as she turned toward the door, she let her fingers trail along the antique cabinet by the window. One Solomon had bought for me. From a flea market 30 years ago. Beautiful piece, she murmured. Probably worth quite a bit. I held the door open. Goodbye, Camille. Her smile was pure venom disguised as charm. Goodbye, Mrs. Green. Take care of yourself. When they were gone, the silence came crashing back, heavier than before. I stood there shaking, staring at the papers left on my coffee table. 15 days. My own son's name printed on a legal document. Against me. I dropped to my knees right there in the living room. My heart hurt so bad it felt like it might split in two. How could he? How could my baby boy, the one I raised with all my heart, stand by and let this woman use his name like a weapon? The tears came fast, hot and silent. I buried my face in my hands and cried until my throat ached. When the storm inside me finally quieted, I wiped my cheeks, stood up, and went straight to the study. Solomon's letter lay on the desk, right where I had left it. I read those lines again, the ones that now burned with truth. Be cautious, even with those you love most. Trust your instincts. I sat back in his chair and whispered, You knew, didn't you, Solomon? You saw what was coming. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every creak in the house, every rustle outside felt like a reminder that peace was gone. But fear wasn't going to save me. Solomon hadn't raised me to be timid by sunrise. I knew what I had to do. Camille might have walked into my home thinking she could play me like a fool, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I had buried a husband, raised a son, built a life from scratch, and I wasn't about to let a stranger tear it apart. If they wanted to play a game with my husband's legacy, then I would play too. But I would play to win. Before I could make my next move, I had to understand who I was really fighting. And soon, I would uncover how deeply Camille had already sunk her claws into my son, long before the funeral flowers had even wilted. I woke up the next morning before sunrise. The sky outside still a deep shade of gray over the city of Atlanta. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the papers that lawyer had left behind. They lay there on the nightstand, like a reminder that peace had packed up and left this house. I brewed coffee just to keep my hands busy, but the smell only reminded me of Solomon. He used to say, "Ruth, coffee don't fix every problem, but it sure gives you courage while you try." I smiled through my tears, whispering, "I need a whole pot of courage today." Solomon. That morning, I called Mr. Franklin, the family attorney Solomon trusted for decades. He listened quietly as I explained what had happened. How Camille showed up with a lawyer. How she talked about my husband's money like it was her birthright. There was a pause on the other end before he finally said, "Mrs. Green, I've seen greed tear families apart, but rarely this fast. You did right keeping the inheritance quiet. I'll come by this afternoon. Do not sign anything." I thanked him and hung up. But before I could even breathe a little easier, my phone started buzzing again. It was David. "Mom," he said, his tone strange, distant, almost rehearsed. "Camille told me she stopped by to make sure everything's in order. You weren't upset, were you?" "Upset?" I repeated slowly. "Your wife-to-be brought a lawyer into my home less than a week after your father's funeral. You tell me, David, should I be upset?" He sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. "Mom, she was just trying to help. You've never handled legal stuff before, and she works at a bank. She understands these things." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone. "David, baby, help is something you offer, not something you force into a grieving woman's house. That girl doesn't care about your father's memory. She cares about his money." "Mom," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut. "That's not fair. You don't even know her like I do." I could hear Camille's voice faintly in the background, soft and controlling. "Tell her not to worry, honey. I'll handle it." That whisper hit me harder than his anger. "David," I said quietly, "I want you to remember something your father always told you. The people who love you never rush you into something you don't understand." He didn't answer for a moment. Then his voice hardened. "Mom, I just want what belongs to me. You can't keep everything forever." "Belongs to you?" I said slowly, the words trembling out of me. "Your father just passed, and all you can think about is what belongs to you." But before I could say another word, he hung up. For a long time, I just stood there, holding that silent phone in my hand. My heart didn't just ache. It cracked open. My baby boy, the child I carried in my arms through every sickness, every storm, was now standing on the other side of a line drawn by greed. By the time Mr. Franklin arrived that afternoon, I had gone through every stage of pain a mother could feel: heartbreak, anger, disbelief, and something colder: resolve. He sat with me in the kitchen, opened his briefcase, and began reviewing the will Solomon had left. "Your husband was careful," he said. "He left the estate in a trust under your management, but he also added something unusual." He pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. "If David marries within 2 years of Solomon's passing to someone with financial motives, his access to the inheritance is restricted to 8%. The rest stays with you until he turns 40, or until you decide he's mature enough to manage it." I blinked, hardly believing what I was hearing. You mean Solomon knew? He saw this coming? Mr. Franklin nodded slowly. He told me once, Franklin, my boy's heart is too soft. He'll see the best in a viper if it smiles pretty enough. Your husband was preparing for this long before he died. I covered my mouth with one hand, tears forming again. That man was protecting me even from the grave. Mr. Franklin reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. And now it's your turn to protect what he left behind. Do nothing yet. Let her make the next move. Greedy people always expose themselves sooner than later. He gathered his things, promised to return the next day, and left me sitting in that quiet kitchen, thinking about what he said. That evening, I went through Solomon's old desk drawers, hoping to find something, anything, that could tell me how deep Camille had already dug her claws into my family. Among the receipts and business records, I found a small folder labeled Calls, Home Line. The phone bills went back almost a year, long before Solomon passed. But something caught my eye. Repeated calls from our home phone to a downtown bank, the same bank where Camille worked. At first, I thought maybe Solomon had business with them, but the calls started months before Camille and David had even met. My hands began to shake. I turned the pages faster. There were dozens of calls, short, 1-minute conversations spread across weeks. I whispered, "Oh Lord, she's been after us all along." That night, I called David again. It took 4 tries before he answered. "David, we need to talk," I said firmly. "Mom, please." He sighed, sounding irritated. "I'm at work. I don't care where you are. This is important. I have proof that." "Proof of what?" He interrupted, his voice sharp. "That woman called this house before she ever met you. She knew about your father's businesses before you even brought her home. You can call it fate if you want, but I call it a setup." He was silent for a long moment. Then, in a cold voice, he said, "I'm done listening to this. You're making things up because you can't stand the fact that I found someone." "David, listen to me," I pleaded. "She's not who she says she is." But he didn't. He hung up again. I sat there in the dark with the phone in my hand, my heart heavy as a stone. It was in that stillness that I made myself a promise. If my son refused to see the truth, I would bring the truth to him, loud, clear, and undeniable. The next day, I drove down to the bank. It was one of those sleek new buildings downtown, all glass and shine. When I walked in, I could feel the air change. Polite smiles, fake greetings. The kind of place where money talks louder than people. A young man at the counter greeted me kindly. "Good afternoon, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I'd like to talk about investments," I said, pretending to be interested. "For widows." He nodded and led me to a small office. While he explained things I didn't need to know, I let my eyes wander toward the upper floor. And there she was, Camille, walking through the hall in a fitted navy dress, her heels clicking like punctuation marks. The young man followed my gaze and smiled. "That's Ms. Camille Rivers. She's one of our estate account specialists. Smart woman. Handles all the big inheritance clients." My stomach turned. "Big inheritance clients?" "Yes, ma'am. She's got an eye for them, too. Everyone says she can sense when money's about to move. Kind of her gift. Her gift. Lord have mercy. When I got home that day, I locked every door and checked every drawer. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Then I noticed something worse. The top drawer of Solomon's desk, the one where I'd left the phone bills, was slightly open. The papers were gone. Every last one of them. That's when I smelled it. a faint trace of Camille's perfume. Expensive, floral, sharp. She had been in my house. She had stolen the evidence. I pressed my hand to my mouth and backed away from the desk. For the first time, fear truly entered my bones. Not just fear of losing money, but fear that this woman was capable of anything. Lying, manipulating, maybe even worse. That night, I sat in Solomon's chair, shaking but not broken. I looked at his photograph and whispered, "They think I'm weak because I'm old and alone. But they're wrong. They're so wrong. Because I wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. If Camille wanted war, she had just declared it on the wrong woman. But before I could strike back, Camille invited me into her world. A polished, poisonous trap that would test not just my patience, but my faith in the son I once thought I knew. Saturday morning sunlight slipped through my curtains, but it didn't bring comfort. My stomach had been in knots since last night, ever since I got that phone call. Camille's voice had been sugar-sweet, but every word dripped poison. "Mrs. Green," she had said, "David and I would love for you to come by for lunch tomorrow. Nothing formal, just family." She paused before adding, "It'll be a good time to talk. You know, about the estate. I think we can settle things peacefully." Peaceful. My foot. That girl didn't know peace if it stood right in front of her holding a Bible. Still, I agreed to come. A woman like Camille wanted me off balance, wanted me to show fear. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. That morning, I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit, low heels, my hair pinned neat. I put on the pearl earrings Solomon gave me for our 25th anniversary, a reminder that I came from strength, not weakness. Before I left, I stopped by his study, touched the frame that held our wedding photo, and whispered, "Be with me today, Solomon. I'm walking into a lion's den." Camille and David lived in a new apartment complex on the north side of Atlanta, fancy, modern. The kind of place where the rent alone could feed a small family. I couldn't figure out how a woman who worked at a bank and a man still paying off student loans could afford it. When I arrived, the lobby smelled like polished marble and artificial lavender. The security guard nodded politely as he buzzed me in. I rode the elevator up to the 10th floor, my hands tight around my purse. Camille opened the door before I could even knock twice. She looked like she'd stepped out of a catalog. Soft beige dress, gold jewelry, her hair sleek and straight. Her smile was all politeness, none of it kindness. "Mrs. Green." "Right on time," she said brightly. "Come in, please." The apartment was spotless, almost too spotless. No warmth, no trace of home. Just cold perfection. White couches, glass table, a framed photo of her and David on the mantel, smiling like the world had been kind to them. My son stood near the dining table, his shirt crisp and his smile forced. "Hey, Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. "Hey, baby," I answered softly. "How have you been?" Before he could speak, Camille's voice cut through the room. "He's been doing wonderful. Work's been busy, but we're managing." And then, like a snake sliding from the shadows, another woman's voice joined in. "Well, look who we have here." A woman about my age, dressed sharp in a red blazer, stood up from the couch. Her features were strikingly similar to Camille's. "I'm Camille's mother, Denise Rivers. It's nice to finally meet you." I gave her a polite nod. "Pleasure." She smiled, but her eyes were colder than winter rain. "Losing your husband so suddenly must have been hard. I suppose now you're all alone in that big old house, huh?" That wasn't sympathy. That was fishing. I straightened my back. "I've lived there most of my life, Ms. Rivers. Feels just fine to me. Camille motioned toward the table. Please, let's eat. I made lasagna. I sat down, though my hands trembled slightly. Across from me sat another stranger, a woman in a black blazer with a briefcase at her feet. Camille gestured to her. This is my cousin, Alicia. She's an attorney. Thought she could help make things clear for everyone. So this was what they meant by family lunch. As plates were passed and small talk floated across the table, I barely tasted a thing. I was studying them. The smirks, the glances, the quiet coordination. They were here for one reason, to corner me. Finally, Denise set down her fork and said casually, So, Mrs. Green, Camille tells me the inheritance paperwork still isn't filed. That's unusual, isn't it? I folded my napkin carefully and placed it beside my plate. There's nothing unusual about it. Mr. Franklin is handling everything. Camille gave a quick little laugh. Oh, yes, the old family lawyer. Bless him. I'm sure he's a nice man, but these things can take forever with someone his age. I looked her dead in the eye. He's been my husband's lawyer for over 30 years. I trust him more than anyone. Denise leaned forward slightly. Trust is good, dear, but the law is the law. David has a right to his share, you know. You can't keep everything just because you want control. Her tone was sharp, a velvet knife. I turned to my son, the only one at that table whose heart I hoped still had some good left in it. David, do you agree with that? He looked down at his plate, silent. David, I repeated, softer this time. Do you agree that your mother's trying to keep everything? He finally looked up, and the boy I raised was gone. In his place sat a man I barely recognized. Mom, I just want what's fair. He said, fair. That word again. Fair, I said slowly, keeping my voice calm. You think it's fair for your wife's family to bring lawyers to the table when your father's memory hasn't even faded from our walls. Camille reached out, placing her hand over his. Mrs. Green, please don't make this harder. Everyone knows Mr. Green left more than you've said. The gas stations, the properties, the farm, they're all public record. We just want transparency. I gave her a thin smile. Transparency or control? The air in the room tightened. Denise leaned forward. Now, don't get defensive, Ruth. We're all family here. No, I said softly. Family doesn't send lawyers to lunch. Camille's cousin Alicia chose that moment to open her briefcase. Mrs. Green, if you do not submit the required documents within the week, we'll have to file for a state disclosure in court. You'll lose your say in how things are handled. I felt my heart pounding, but my face stayed calm. And if I refuse to be bullied? Alicia smiled faintly. Then the law will decide. I turned to my son one more time. David, this is your wife and her family talking about dragging your mother into court. Do you really stand with them? His eyes filled with frustration. Mom, you're twisting everything. No one's trying to hurt you. I just want what belongs to me. The room went silent. You could have heard the clock ticking in the kitchen. I pushed back my chair slowly and stood up. You think I'm holding you back, David. But one day, you'll realize I've been the only thing standing between you and ruin. Camille's smile faltered. Mrs. Green, you're tired. Maybe you should rest. I'm tired. All right, I said. Tired of being disrespected in my own husband's name. Tired of wolves pretending to be family. Denise crossed her arms. Careful, Ruth. Pride can make a person lose everything. I met her gaze. So can greed. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the air conditioner. Then I reached for my purse, lifted my chin, and said, You'll all regret this. Camille stood to, her voice cold now. No, Mrs. Green. The only one who'll regret anything is you. When you realize you can't win against us. I walked to the door without another word. My knees trembled, but I didn't let them see it. The moment the elevator doors closed, my body gave out. I gripped the metal railing and cried. Not because I was afraid, but because I'd finally seen how far they were willing to go. When I got home, the house felt emptier than ever. I locked the doors, sat in Solomon's study, and held his letter close to my heart. I can't take this anymore, Solomon, I whispered. I'm trying to be strong, but it hurts. It hurts so bad. And that's when something inside me shifted. My tears dried on their own, replaced by something sharper, steadier, anger. But the kind that gave me power, not pain. If they wanted war, I'd give them war. Not with shouting or chaos, but with patience, with proof, with truth. That night, I reread Solomon's letter one last time. Trust your instincts. You are stronger than you think. I called Mr. Franklin before the clock struck 10. Meet me tomorrow morning, I said. I'm done letting them corner me. It's time I start fighting back. My voice was calm, strong, and certain, just like Solomon's had always been. The next morning, I sat across from Mr. Franklin with a plan that would change everything. But even as we plotted our next move, Camille was already one step ahead. And soon, her cruelty would reach a level I never imagined. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The sky outside was still wrapped in darkness, and the city was just beginning to stir. I moved through the house quietly, each step echoing through rooms that once carried laughter. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat in the kitchen, watching the first light touch the magnolia tree outside. Solomon used to sit in that same spot every morning, reading the paper and humming gospel songs under his breath. Now, all I had was his voice in my memory, calm, wise, and always a step ahead of everyone else. At 7 sharp, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Mr. Franklin was never late. He came inside carrying his leather briefcase, and that same gentle patience that had seen me through more than one hard season. Morning, Ruth, he said, removing his hat. I brought coffee, but I see you've already beaten me to it. I smiled faintly. When sleep won't come, caffeine will. He chuckled, then sat across from me at the kitchen table. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about that lunch, the lawyers, the threats, the way Camille's family surrounded me like vultures circling something dying. I told him how David just sat there, watching it all, not saying a word to defend me. When I finished, Mr. Franklin rubbed his temples and sighed. I've seen greed take ugly shapes in my time, but this, he shook his head. They're not just after the money, Ruth. They're after control. I folded my hands. So how do I stop them? He opened his briefcase, pulled out Solomon's will, and laid it on the table. Your husband left something powerful here, he said. He didn't just leave you money. He left you protection. He pointed to a section I hadn't noticed before, written in Solomon's steady handwriting, notarized and sealed. If my son, David Green, marries within 2 years of my death to someone motivated by financial interest, his access to the estate shall be reduced to 8% until the age of 40. All remaining assets will remain under the management of my wife, Ruth Green, for life. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. He really wrote that. Mr. Franklin nodded. Your husband understood people, Ruth. He'd seen how money changes them. He set this clause in motion to protect both you and David from outsiders and from himself. Tears welled in my eyes. He was always thinking 2 steps ahead. Mr. Franklin smiled softly. He loved you enough to plan for this very moment. But there's one thing we need before we can enforce it. What's that? Proof, he said firmly. We have to prove Camille married David for money. Suspicion isn't enough. Courts don't rule on feelings. They rule on evidence. I leaned back in my chair. Evidence? Like what? Records, messages, witnesses. Anything that shows she knew about Solomon's estate before she met your son. If we can prove she targeted him, this clause will hold. I took a deep breath and nodded. Then I'll get it. Whatever it takes. Mr. Franklin adjusted his glasses. Do you still have those phone bills you mentioned? The ones showing calls from your home to her bank. I looked down. I did. But they're gone. She broke into my house and took them. He frowned. Then we'll get new ones. Those records are stored by the phone company. We'll subpoena them if we have to. For now, Ruth, stay calm. Let her think she's winning. People like her always overplay their hand. I nodded slowly, my resolve hardening. That afternoon, I decided to set my own trap. Before calling Camille, I downloaded a voice recorder app on my cell phone, one that recorded every call automatically. Then, when I felt my nerves settle, I dialed her number. Camille, I said, putting on my best weary voice. Mrs. Green, she replied cheerfully. Have you thought about what we discussed? I have, I said. You're right. I'm old. I'm tired. And I don't want to fight with my son anymore. I'll talk to Mr. Franklin about transferring some assets to David. There was a pause, one I could almost hear her smile through. That's wonderful news, Mrs. Green. I'm so glad you're thinking reasonably. It'll take time, I continued. You know how these things are. Paperwork, banks, signatures. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Her tone sharpened a little. 2 weeks. That's a long time. I sighed softly, as if I were giving up. It's all I can manage. Unless, of course, you want me to die from stress before anything's done. There was silence, then a quick laugh. Of course not, Mrs. Green. 2 weeks will be fine. Just don't delay. I won't, I said. Goodbye. Camille. When I hung up, I looked at Mr. Franklin, who had been sitting beside me, listening the whole time. His eyes crinkled behind his glasses. You bought us time. Smart woman. Time is all I need, I said. Over the next few days, I turned my home into a fortress. I had a locksmith install a new deadbolt and a safe in the study. I bought 3 small security cameras, hidden in the hallway, the living room, and the front entryway, disguised as smoke detectors. If Camille tried to sneak back into my home, I'd catch her this time. But that wasn't all. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Gloria Harris, recommended by a friend from church. She was in her early 50s, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued. The kind of woman you could tell had seen it all. When I showed her Camille's photo, she smiled slightly. Pretty girl, she said. Pretty usually means dangerous when money's involved. I need to know everything about her. I said, where she came from, who she's dated, what she's hiding. Gloria leaned back in her chair. You'll get it. But I don't work cheap. I'm not asking for cheap. I replied, I'm asking for truth. She nodded, impressed. Then give me 2 weeks. And keep your phone on. As Gloria went to work, I started doing my own digging. I visited the county records office downtown. It took 3 hours and a stack of paperwork. But I found the deed to Camille and David's apartment, paid in full, for months before Solomon died. Nearly $900,000. Cash. I stared at that number, my pulse racing. Lord, how could she afford this? The answer hit me like thunder. She couldn't. Someone else's money had bought that apartment. Maybe a man, maybe a previous husband. When I got home, I called Gloria. Check her past relationships, I said, especially the last few years. I think she's done this before. She laughed softly. You've got instincts, Miss Ruth. I like you. I'll dig. The next few days moved slow, but not quiet. My phone buzzed with gossip from neighbors, whispers of things Camille had been saying around town. She was painting me as greedy, cold, controlling. I said nothing in return. I let her talk, because while she was busy spreading lies, I was building truth. 1 week later, Gloria called. Meet me at my office, she said. I've got something you're going to want to see. I could hear the excitement in her voice. When I arrived, she had a folder thick enough to choke a shredder. She slid it across the desk. Your daughter-in-law, she said, has a pattern. I opened it. Inside were photos, screenshots, and old public records. Camille had worked at 3 different banks in 5 years, always in the estates department. And every time she left a job, there was a man involved. Her first relationship was with a wealthy widower. She'd gotten engaged, convinced him to put her on his accounts, and walked away with over $1 million when it fell apart. The second was with the son of a small business owner, a gas station chain owner. Just like Solomon, she'd convinced that man to sue his own siblings after their father died. And the third, she married him, divorced within a year, took nearly half his inheritance. Gloria slid one last paper across the desk, a printed message from an old chat backup. Found a guy, only child. Dad's sick, big money, easy one if I play it right. Underneath that message was the date, 7 months before Solomon's funeral. I couldn't breathe. Easy one, I whispered. She was talking about my son. Gloria nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Ruth, but now you've got proof. Real, solid proof. I gathered the papers carefully, sliding them into my purse. Thank you, Gloria. You've done more than you know. When I got home, I sat down at Solomon's desk, surrounded by evidence. Every picture, every document told the same story. Camille had hunted my son like a wolf hunts prey. I didn't cry this time. I didn't tremble. I just whispered, You were right again, Solomon. You always knew. Then I called Mr. Franklin. It's time, I said. I'm ready to fight. I thought the truth would set everything straight. But the moment I tried to bring it to David, I learned the hardest truth of all. When a man is blinded by love, even the truth can look like betrayal. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of strength I hadn't felt in months. The kind that comes from knowing the truth and having the proof to back it up. I stood in front of the mirror, buttoned my cream-colored blouse, and looked myself dead in the eyes. You've buried a husband, I whispered to my reflection. And you've raised a man. You can face a liar. By 8 o'clock sharp, I had all the documents packed neatly in a brown envelope. Every photo, every message, every record that proved who Camille really was. My hands shook a little, but not from fear, from the weight of what was about to happen. I wasn't just confronting a greedy woman anymore. I was facing my own son. David had called the night before, his voice tight with irritation. Mom, can we talk in person? You've been avoiding us. Us, I thought bitterly. It was always us now. Him and Camille. One mind, one mission. Come by around 10. I told him. I'll be home. When he arrived that morning, I heard the hum of his car before I even looked out the window. He parked right in the driveway, like nothing was wrong. I noticed he was alone. A part of me wanted to hug him, to pretend we could still fix everything. But the moment he stepped inside, I saw the tension in his face. His eyes darted around the house, not like a son coming home, but like a man inspecting a place that might soon be his. "Morning, baby," I said softly. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me, then at the envelope on the table. "What's that?" "That," I said, "is the truth." He frowned, pulling out a chair but not sitting. "Mom, if this is about Camille again, it's about you," I interrupted. "And the woman you think you know." I slid the envelope toward him. "Go on. Read." He hesitated, then pulled the papers out. I watched as his eyes moved across the first page. Camille's photo, her previous marriages, her work history, then the old text message, the one where she called him an easy one. His brow furrowed. "Where did you get this?" "I had someone look into her," I said. "A private investigator. That message was written months before you ever met her, David. She targeted you. She targeted our family." He shook his head, laughing bitterly. "You're unbelievable. You actually paid someone to dig through my wife's past?" "Your wife?" I asked quietly. "Or your mistake?" His face darkened. "You're trying to destroy my marriage. You can't stand that someone else has influence over me." I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "Influence? David, she's controlling you. She stole documents from this house. She's using your love like a weapon." He slammed the papers down. "No, Mom, you're using fear. You never liked her, and now you're making things up to scare me into choosing you over her." The words hit me like a slap. I had expected anger, maybe even denial, but that cold, dismissive tone, that wasn't my son talking. That was Camille talking through him. "David," I said softly, "when you were little, you used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. You said you trusted me to keep you safe. Do you remember that?" He looked away, jaw tight. "I'm trying to keep you safe now," I continued. "This isn't about pride, or control, or money. It's about love. A mother's love trying to save her son before he loses everything." His shoulders tensed. "I'm not a child anymore." "No," I said. "You're a grown man making a child's mistake." He stood abruptly. "That's enough. I'm done listening to your nonsense." I didn't stop him. I just said, "If you walk out that door without looking at those papers again, she'll take everything. Not just the money, David. She'll take you from yourself." He paused by the doorway, his back to me. For a moment, I saw the little boy he used to be, standing small and unsure. Then he straightened his shoulders. "Goodbye, Mom." The door closed behind him with a hollow click that echoed through the whole house. I sank into the nearest chair, my heart breaking in ways I didn't think it still could. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the envelope he left behind, untouched, unopened, unwanted. The truth, sitting right in front of him, and he chose not to see it. That night, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I walked through the house like a ghost, touching the walls, the furniture, the old photographs that told the story of our family, a story that was slipping away. Near midnight, the doorbell rang. My heart jumped. When I opened the door, I found a plain envelope lying on the porch. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a court notice. Camille had filed a petition for immediate estate review. She was suing me. The next morning, I went straight to Mr. Franklin's office. He read the document carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "This is aggressive," he muttered. "She's claiming you're withholding marital assets and attempting to defraud your own son. This isn't about inheritance anymore. This is personal." I pressed my hand against my chest. "She's turning my son against me in court." Mr. Franklin sighed. "That's what it looks like. But don't lose hope, Ruth. The evidence we have, her pattern, her message, her past, it's strong. If we present it correctly, the judge will see who she really is." I nodded, though my heart felt heavy as stone. "And what about David?" Mr. Franklin looked down. "Sometimes, truth takes time to open blinded eyes." When I got home, I went straight to the study. I sat down, staring at Solomon's picture. "They're taking our boy to court against me," I whispered. "But I won't let them win. I'll fight for his soul even if he hates me for it." A few days later, I got a message from Gloria, the investigator. "Ruth," she said, her voice low, "you need to know something. Camille's been talking to another man, a wealthy businessman from Buckhead. She's been meeting him at the hotel off Peachtree Street every Wednesday night." My heart dropped. "Are you sure?" "Positive. I've got photos. Do you want me to send them?" "Yes," I said quietly. When the photos arrived, I could hardly look at them. Camille and a tall man in a suit, holding hands in the parking lot. Her face lit up with a smile I'd never seen her give my son. I printed those photos and placed them in a new folder. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. The truth was gathering strength, one piece at a time. But even as I planned how to present it, I knew something was coming. Because snakes don't sleep when they sense danger. They strike first. That evening, my phone rang again. It was David, his voice trembling this time. "Mom," he said, "Camille told me you hired someone to spy on her. Is that true?" "I did what I had to do," I said gently. "And I found something you need to see." He exhaled sharply. "You're making this worse. She's furious. She said she's filing for a restraining order if you don't back off." I stayed silent for a moment. Then, quietly, I said, "Let her file it. Because when she does, I'll file the truth." He hung up again, but not before I heard his voice break. That small crack in his tone told me there was still a part of him, buried deep, that wasn't sure anymore. And that gave me hope as night fell. I sat by the window, watching the streetlights flicker against the wet pavement. Atlanta was quiet, but inside me, a storm was brewing. They thought they could scare me into silence. But I was my husband's wife, and Solomon didn't raise a coward. If Camille wanted a battle in court, she'd get one. But she wouldn't be fighting a broken widow. She'd be facing a mother armed with truth, and the fire of a woman who'd already lost too much to lose again. The court date was set, and word spread through town like wildfire. But what none of them knew was that I wasn't walking into that courtroom alone. I had one last ally, someone from Camille's past who was about to change everything. The morning of the hearing came cloaked in gray skies. Atlanta rain fell steady, drumming against the windshield as I sat in Mr. Franklin's car outside the courthouse. My hands rested on the folder in my lap, the one holding everything I had gathered: Camille's messages, her past records, and the photographs that showed her betrayal in full color. I had barely slept the night before. I'd spent hours sitting at Solomon's old desk, praying softly under my breath, not for victory, but for strength. "Lord," I whispered, "I've done all I can. The rest is in your hands now." Mr. Franklin looked over at me. "You ready, Ruth?" I nodded. though my heart thudded like a slow drum. As I'll ever be. He gave a gentle smile. You're stronger than you think. When we walked inside, the courtroom was already filling. David sat near the front beside Camille and her attorney, a sharp-looking man, in a dark blue suit with eyes that gave away nothing. Camille turned when I entered. Her smile was faint, smug, polished, the kind of smile that said she believed she'd already won. I didn't return it. I sat quietly beside Mr. Franklin, folding my hands in my lap. Across the room, David avoided my eyes. He looked nervous, tugging at his tie, his leg bouncing under the table. My heart ached for him. I wanted to reach across that space, take his hand, and remind him he was still my baby boy. But for now, I had to let the truth speak for itself. When the judge entered, everyone stood. He was an older man with a calm face and tired eyes, the kind that had seen too many families torn apart by greed. Be seated, he said, his voice firm but patient. We're here to review the estate of the late Mr. Solomon Green, following the petition filed by Mr. David Green and Mrs. Camille Green. The opposing attorney stood first. Your Honor, he began, this case is simple. Mrs. Ruth Green has deliberately concealed assets belonging to her late husband's estate. My clients only wish for transparency and their rightful inheritance. I could feel Mr. Franklin bristle beside me, but he waited until the lawyer finished before rising. Your Honor, he said, his tone steady and respectful. This case is not about transparency. It's about deception. A deception orchestrated by someone who entered this family with greed, not love. We intend to prove that Mrs. Camille Green married her husband under false pretenses, having targeted this family for financial gain long before meeting Mr. David Green. A low murmur rippled through the courtroom. Camille's face tightened. The judge leaned back slightly. That's a serious claim, Mr. Franklin. I hope you can support it. Oh, we can, he said calmly. And we will. The hearing began with paperwork, estate reports, property lists, financial accounts. Camille's lawyer pressed hard, painting me as secretive, controlling, unwilling to share. Every word was meant to sting, to make me look like an old woman clinging to money she didn't earn. When it was Mr. Franklin's turn, he called the first witness, Gloria Harris. Camille's eyebrows lifted when Gloria walked to the stand. She hadn't expected her. None of them had. Ms. Harris, Mr. Franklin said, please state your occupation. I'm a private investigator, Gloria said, her tone clear and strong. And were you hired by Mrs. Ruth Green? I was. What was your task? To investigate the background of Mrs. Camille Green and determine if she had any financial motive connected to her marriage. Camille's lawyer shot up. Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay and invasion of privacy. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Mr. Franklin nodded. Ms. Harris, what did your investigation reveal? Gloria opened her file and began reading. Over the past 6 years, Mrs. Green Camille has been involved with 3 previous men, all with substantial family wealth. In each case, she gained access to financial information or inheritance assets, to engagements, 1 marriage, all ending abruptly after money was transferred to her. A hush fell over the courtroom. Franklin stepped closer. And did you find any direct evidence that she targeted Mr. David Green before meeting him? Gloria nodded. Yes. A recovered message from her online account, dated 7 months before their first meeting. It reads, found a guy-only child. Dad's sick. Big money. Easy one if I play it right. Gasps echoed across the room. Camille's lawyer jumped to his feet again. Objection. That message is unauthenticated. Mr. Franklin calmly handed a document to the judge. Your Honor, these records were obtained through legal channels and verified by digital forensics. The judge reviewed the paper, then looked up. Objection overruled. Camille shifted in her seat, her composure cracking. Her hand clenched David's arm, but he didn't look at her. His face had gone pale. Franklin continued, his voice like steady thunder. Ms. Harris, did you find any additional evidence of misconduct? Yes, Gloria said. Mrs. Green has also been meeting privately with another man, a Mr. Leonard Carter, since shortly after her marriage. I have photographs documenting their encounters. Mr. Franklin lifted the folder and handed the pictures to the judge. Camille's attorney tried to protest again, but it was too late. The truth was out. The judge leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Green, he said, turning his gaze to Camille, would you like to respond to these allegations? Camille swallowed hard, her voice trembling for the first time. Those photos are out of context. Leonard is just a friend. The judge raised an eyebrow. A friend you meet at a hotel every Wednesday night. The courtroom erupted in whispers. David's face fell into his hands. I wanted to reach for him, but I stayed still. This was his moment. The moment when the fog began to clear. Camille's lawyer quickly shifted tactics. Even if that's true, Your Honor, it doesn't change the fact that the estate is still owed transparency. The judge nodded slowly. Indeed, but it changes the motive. He turned to me. Mrs. Green, do you have anything to say before I rule? I stood, my hands trembling but my voice steady. Your Honor, I am not here to fight my son. I am here to protect what his father built. My husband trusted me to guard this family, even from those who come smiling with evil in their hearts. I do not hate my daughter-in-law. I pity her. But I will not let her tear my son apart for greed. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. Even Camille didn't move. The judge exhaled, rubbing his chin. This court has seen many inheritance disputes, but few as disheartening as this one. He looked toward David, whose eyes were red and unfocused. Mr. Green, I hope one day you'll understand the kind of love it takes to protect someone who's turned against you. Then he picked up his gavel. My ruling is as follows. Mrs. Ruth Green remains the sole trustee of the estate, per her late husband's will. The clause restricting inheritance stands. Furthermore, this court advises Mrs. Camille Green to seek counsel regarding potential charges of fraud. The gavel struck once, loud and final. It was over. Camille's face went white as paper. She stood quickly, muttering something under her breath, and stormed out of the courtroom. Her lawyer followed close behind. David stayed seated, staring at the floor. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, he looked up, eyes full of shame, confusion, and heartbreak. Mom, he said softly, I don't know what to say. I walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to say anything yet, baby. Just go home. Think. Pray. He nodded slowly, then walked away without another word. When the doors closed behind him, Mr. Franklin turned to me. You did it, Ruth. I shook my head, tears finally breaking free. No, Franklin. The truth did it. I just held on long enough to see it. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight pushed through the clouds, spilling across the courthouse steps. I lifted my face to the light and whispered, Thank you, Solomon. You were right all along. But even as warmth touched my skin, I knew the storm wasn't done. Because love leaves scars deeper than any legal wound, and the road to healing between a mother and her son was only just beginning. The truth had freed me, but it broke my son in the process. Days later, when David showed up at my door again, alone, hollow-eyed, and trembling, I realized that winning the case was only half the battle. The rest was finding our way back to each other. 3 days passed before I saw David again. The court had given me justice, but justice felt strangely heavy, like holding a victory soaked in sorrow. The house was quiet that week, too quiet. Even the clock in Solomon's study seemed to tick slower, as if it knew my heart was waiting for something that hadn't yet come home. Each morning I fixed 2 cups of coffee out of habit, then poured one down the sink. I tried to busy myself with chores, dusting the same picture frames, folding towels that didn't need folding. But grief comes back in little ways. The smell of his old aftershave on the hallway coat, the echo of his laughter caught in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. By the 4th evening, the sound of gravel crunching outside pulled me from my thoughts. Headlights cut through the window blinds, then went still. My chest tightened. I didn't need to look. A mother always knows when her child is near. When I opened the door, David stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes red and tired. He looked older somehow, like the past week had aged him years. "Hey, Mom," he said softly. My throat caught. "Hey, baby, come in." He stepped inside slowly, as if unsure if he was still welcome. I led him to the living room, the same place we'd sat so many times before, back when our problems were simple things. Like school grades and curfews, we sat in silence for a long while. The rain began again outside, gentle and steady, filling the quiet with its rhythm. Finally, he spoke. I don't even know where to start. I folded my hands in my lap. "Start anywhere, son." He rubbed his face, voice shaking. I saw those pictures again, the ones of her and that man. I wanted to believe they were fake, but she confessed last night, said she'd been seeing him for months, said she only married me because she thought your money would be easier to get to than his. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I wanted to reach for him, but I waited. Sometimes love means giving space for pain to breathe. He looked up at me then, tears glimmering in his eyes. "You were right, Mom, about everything, and I was too blind to see it." I moved closer, gently taking his hand. "Baby, I never wanted to be right. I just wanted you to be safe." His shoulders shook, and his voice broke. "She drained my savings, Mom. Took what she could and left. I don't even care about the money. It's how she used me. How she used you." I felt a quiet anger rise in my chest, not fiery, but slow and steady like coals that refused to die. "That girl never understood what she threw away," I said softly. "But you're still here, and that means God's giving you another chance." He nodded weakly. "I don't deserve one." "Yes, you do," I said firmly. "You made a mistake. You trusted the wrong person. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human." He laughed bitterly. "I treated you like the enemy. And still," I whispered, "you're my son." He lowered his head, and I placed my hand on his cheek like I had when he was a boy. His tears fell into my palm, warm and real. "I'm sorry, Mom, for everything I said, for not listening." I smiled faintly through my own tears. "You don't owe me sorry, baby. You owe yourself forgiveness." We sat there like that for a while, 2 broken hearts finally beating in the same rhythm again. The silence between us wasn't painful anymore. It was healing. After a while, he glanced toward the photo of Solomon on the mantel. "Dad would have been disappointed in me," I followed his gaze and smiled softly. No, son. He'd have been proud you found your way back before it was too late. Your father never measured a man by how he fell, only by how he got back up. David swallowed hard and nodded. What happens now? Now, I said, you start over. You find your peace again. I'll help you if you let me. He gave a tired smile. I don't deserve that. Maybe not, I said with a small laugh. But grace doesn't ask who deserves it. He laughed too, a quiet, broken sound that still managed to bring warmth to the room. For the first time in months, I saw my son again, not the angry man blinded by love, but the boy I raised, humble and learning. After a while, I went to the kitchen and made us both tea. He followed me like he used to when he was little, sitting on the same stool he'd once used to watch me cook. Smells the same, he said, looking around the room. Feels the same. That's because this house never stopped being your home, I said. Even when your heart wandered. We talked long into the evening. About the trial, about Solomon, about how people can lose themselves when love turns into illusion. Every word felt like a stitch, slowly mending what had been torn. Before he left that night, David hugged me for a long time. Not the kind of hug you give out of habit, but the kind that says thank you for not giving up on me. As he walked toward the door, he turned back. Mom, he said quietly, do you think people like Camille ever regret what they do? I sighed, glancing toward the window where the rain had stopped. Maybe, but regret's only worth something if it changes the heart. Some folks don't change. They just move on to their next victim. He nodded. I hope she doesn't hurt anyone else. She will, I said softly, until life catches up to her. He stood there for a moment, then said, I love you, Mom. It had been so long since I'd heard those words from him that I had to steady myself. Before answering, I love you more, baby. Always have, always will. After he drove away, I sat on the porch for a while, the air cool and sweet with the smell of rain. I looked up at the night sky, the clouds drifting apart to reveal a few quiet stars. Solomon, I whispered. Our boy came home, and in that stillness, I swear I could almost hear him. That low, familiar hum, gentle and proud. The pain didn't vanish, but it softened. My heart still carried scars, but they were healing in the light of forgiveness. As I turned off the porch light and locked the door, I realized something I hadn't understood until that night. Sometimes winning isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about saving what's left of love when everything else has burned away. Peace was beginning to settle again, but life wasn't done teaching me. A week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox, one that carried Camille's name. And though she was gone from our lives, her shadow wasn't finished reaching for what didn't belong to her. A week after David came home, the air in Atlanta felt lighter. The magnolia tree outside my window was blooming again, its white petals catching the morning sun. For the first time in a long time, I woke without fear pressing on my chest. I made breakfast the way Solomon used to love it. Cheese grits, scrambled eggs, and thick toast. David stopped by most mornings now, just to sit and talk. He'd lost weight, and his eyes still carried a quiet sadness. But the bitterness that used to live there was gone. We were healing. Slowly, yes, but healing all the same. Then, one afternoon, I found an envelope in my mailbox. Cream-colored. No return address. My heart sank the moment I saw it. When I turned it over, I saw her name in the corner. Camille Rivers Green. For a long while, I just stood there on the porch, staring at it. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want her voice in my house again. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe closure, told me to read it. I carried it to the kitchen table, the same place where so many battles had begun and ended. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down, and broke the seal. Her handwriting was neat, almost too careful, the kind of script a person uses when they're trying to sound calm, while the world around them is falling apart. Mrs. Green, you probably think I'm a monster. Maybe I am. I won't ask you to forgive me. I just want you to understand something. I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could handle it, thought I could keep my secrets buried. When I first met David, yes, I knew about your family's money. I won't lie, but I didn't expect to love him. And I did, for a while, until the lies I built around us started choking me. You were right about me. I've done terrible things, but losing him broke something in me I didn't think could break. I'm leaving Atlanta. I don't know where I'm going yet. Maybe somewhere quiet. Tell David, I'm sorry. Camille. I read those words twice, then a third time. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was exhaustion, the kind that seeps deep into your bones after too many storms. She was gone, but the echo of what she'd done lingered like smoke after a fire. When David came by that evening, I handed him the letter. He read it quietly, jaw tight, eyes glistening. When he finished, he set it down and said, "She's trying to make herself the victim again." Maybe, I said softly, but sometimes a person's apology isn't for us. It's their way of admitting they finally see themselves clearly. He shook his head. I don't know if I'll ever forgive her. You don't have to, baby, I said. Forgiveness isn't always about letting them back in. Sometimes it's just how we set ourselves free. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the fading light through the kitchen window. I wasted so much time. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his. No time is wasted if you come back wiser. Life's a teacher, and some lessons just cost more than others. He nodded slowly, tears forming but not falling. I wish Dad were here. He is, I whispered. Every time you choose what's right instead of what's easy, that's him in you. We sat there in silence again, the kind of silence that feels sacred. Later that night, after David left, I went out to the porch. The sky above was deep and clear, scattered with stars. I wrapped a shawl around my shoulders and rocked gently in Solomon's old chair. It hit me then, the full weight of what we'd survived. Betrayal, greed, courtrooms, heartbreak. Yet here I was, still standing, still breathing, still loving. For the first time since Solomon passed, I didn't feel alone. I whispered into the night, "We made it, baby. The house is safe. Our boy's coming back to himself. You can rest easy now." A soft wind brushed across my cheek, carrying the scent of magnolia blossoms. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was him. Either way, I smiled. The days that followed brought peace. David started working again, this time with a small charity that helped rebuild homes for struggling families. He said it made him feel useful again, and I believed him. Sometimes he'd stop by with groceries, or sit on the porch and read out loud from Solomon's old Bible. On Sundays, we went back to church together. Folks there had heard about the court case, and while some gave pitying looks, most just hugged me tight and said, "You did what a mother's supposed to do." But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt human, flawed, tired, grateful. One evening, as the sun set low and golden across the Atlanta rooftops, David turned to me and said, "Mom, what made you keep fighting, even when I turned on you?" I looked at him and smiled gently. Because love isn't supposed to quit when it gets hard. It's supposed to hold on, even when your heart's breaking. Your father taught me that. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I think I finally understand. That night, as the crickets sang and the city lights blinked in the distance, I sat alone on the porch one last time and thought about everything. Solomon's wisdom, my son's return, Camille's letter. Life, I realized, doesn't hand out easy endings. It gives you chances to choose grace over anger, truth over pride, and love over everything else. So I took a deep breath and whispered into the warm Georgia air, forgive, but don't forget. Love, but stay wise. Protect your peace like it's gold. Because in the end, that was the real inheritance Solomon had left behind. Not money, not property, but strength. Strength to endure, to forgive, to rebuild. And as the night settled in, wrapping the house in stillness, I knew one thing for sure. I hadn't just kept my husband's fortune safe. I had kept my family's soul alive. Greed can destroy homes, but truth will always rebuild them. Money fades, but integrity lasts longer than any fortune. And no matter how far a child strays, a mother's love, steady, patient, and unyielding, can guide them home again.